I'm going to ask Miss Elaine Bales to come on up for her testimony, and I'm going to get this presentation set up for her. Give me a second here.
Well, if I may, I'm just going to let you know I will not be singing, and you need to be very happy about that. And Martha, I loved when you sang. It was wonderful. And the praise and worship team was wonderful as well. I really thoroughly enjoyed that. We can just go. There we go. Okay.
So I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Wonderful. Well, it's such a joy to be here. My name is Elaine. I'm going to stand to the side here because I'm afraid you really will not be able to see me if I go behind the laptop there. But anyway, many of you may know me from YouTube as JW Escape, and it's such a joy to be here. Never in my wildest dreams could I ever have imagined I would be speaking to ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and I've been told that there's quite a few people speaking online, and I want to welcome you, and it's just the joy of my heart to be here talking to you. And I want you all to know that you're survivors. We survived a horrendous death cult, and I don't think we ever knew what we were a part of, and we probably will never know the extent of what we were a part of until that day that we get to heaven. But this is my story. I'm a survivor just as you all are survivors. Basically, I was born and raised as a Jehovah's Witness second generation. I went through all of school as a Jehovah's Witness, and Martha, I'm going to be a copycat because our stories are the same, because they emptied our minds and filled it with all the same propaganda all over the world. And a lot of my viewers on my channel tell me the same story. Their story in the Netherlands, Norway, wherever in the world is very similar to my story. I remember being in kindergarten and every day getting knots in my stomach because I had to go to school because I knew they were going to say the Pledge of Allegiance and I would have to sit down while everybody stood up. And fortunately, I was tiny and cute, and the kids really didn't tease me. They just questioned me. They'd be like, get up, get up. I'm like, no, get up, yeah, get up, get up, get up. They didn't understand. And even some of my friends today said, Elaine, I have no clue. I had no clue what you went through, but the agony of a child to deal with the things that we had to deal with. We couldn't be in the classrooms during any holiday celebration. So if they were drawing hearts for Valentine's Day, I almost said Thanksgiving, or turkeys, and we had to leave. Every birthday party, I was sent to the office as a child, 5, 6, 7 years old, as if I had done something wrong. And sometimes the office staff were kind, and sometimes they weren't. And there I was, sitting there all by myself, and after the party, I was sent back to the class, and the children had the blue icing from the cupcakes, and the goodie bags. And I didn't have any, but the worst part was when I had a kind teacher who saved me a cupcake, and I wanted that cupcake so bad, and if I ate that cupcake, I was riddled with guilt, and that's something that a child should not have to face. So I was an elder's kid, okay? My father, the authoritarian elder, presiding overseer at the time, I was the youngest. And I finally escaped when I was 23 years old, but I knew from the age of 13, and actually I even knew before that, but from the age of 13, I knew that this was something that I could not be a part of. It was going to kill me. Was totally going to kill me if I stayed in this organization. But it wasn't until I was 23 years old that I walked out. And when I walked out, I never went back. I left my family. At the time, I was married to a Bethelite. He was an ex-Bethelite. I left my every friend I'd ever known, and I left my worldview. And I walked out, turned to strangers, begging for help. Little old me. I'm the type of person, I'm shy. I don't show my feelings and my emotions. That we were always taught that's a sign of weakness. You're strong, and but I did it. So why did I do it? Because I had a shattered mind, but I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know I was in a doomsday cult. These were the pictures. Now, these pictures were after I got out, but, the Paradise Lost book, I studied that book. Some of these things, this is what Jehovah's Witness children are seeing. Look at this. This was what I grew up with. These are the children's book pictures, okay? This is why I left. Day in and day out, I had to endure that, okay? So I just want to get that off the screen because I don't want you to have to take a look at that, okay? Then we'll go there. So basically, my life as a Jehovah's Witness, it was just something that I could no longer endure. And I want to jump to when I left the organization because that's really where my life began, okay? So I left at the age of 23, basically had to go into hiding. My family could not understand what in the world was going on with me, and neither could I, but all I knew was that once I left, once I took that first step, I couldn't go back. Not that I ever had the desire to go back, but I was going to make it no matter what, okay? So I knew they were following me, and it was not too far away from here that I had to go into hiding. But the elders convinced me to go back because they wanted to talk to me. And listen, friends, it's never good. Going back to talk to the elders is never going to be in your favor. You'll only be interrogated. I was interrogated for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And it was at the point where I was just like this. I was like, oh, what is happening? And they accused me of everything in the book. And I really wasn't doing anything wrong. I just did not want to be a part of my religion anymore. So I want to show you a slide here. I was not far from here, maybe just a couple of miles away from this building, and I had just gotten out, and I was working at a bank, and I was a wreck. I'm talking, I had no ability to think on my own. I had no social skills. I had no education because I quit school, and it was Dunedin High School that I quit, okay? I got my GED, but fortunately I did get a bachelor's degree afterwards. That was such a goal of mine, and I praise the Lord that, then you know how it feels, right? It's such a wonderful goal. But anyway, so I was angry, and I just was a total wreck. And I got off work, and I was just stomping out and complaining and all of this. And my coworker, I think her name was Kim, she said to me, she put her hands on my shoulders, and she said, "Don't you know? God is love." And it shook me to my core. Never in my life had I ever heard that. I was a Jehovah's Witness, okay? We never heard that. And I will never forget those 3 words, God is love. She has no idea she said something to me that hit me like a blast of wind, but it did, and I never forgot it. So basically what I did was I wrote a formal letter of excommunication, and I said, I don't want to be a part of this organization anymore. And they refused to accept it. I wanted to go away. And I did not want to be bothered anymore. But they refused to accept it. And, a few months later, gossip here, gossip there, they announced that I was disfellowshipped. So here I am. Now nobody's speaking to me anymore, 23 years old. At least I had my family still after I left to speak to me. And the thing is, you see, my extended family members, we didn't know who they were. They were not worthy of us, right? they had rejected my father's continuous bombardment of this propaganda, and finally they were like, stop. So, all right, we shunned them too, so I couldn't turn to my extended family. This was before the internet, friends. You know what? Back then, people did not get out in the late 80s. I got out. Who would have thought? Never in my wildest dreams, but I knew it would kill me if I stayed in. So I floundered for 20 years, living a life of defeat. I believed the lies of this death cult for 20 years. And I believed every wind of doctrine by the sleight of men and cunning craftiness whereby they lie in wait to deceive. I was an evolutionist at one time. I didn't even know who Charles Darwin was, right? I was an agnostic. I was never an atheist because I believed in God. But remember, they called me a filthy maggot. I thought I turned my back on God, right? I thought I had sold my soul to the devil because when I walked out of that organization, I said, if serving the devil, I'm sorry. I said, if this is what serving God is like, serving the devil cannot be any worse. I could not be any more good than I was, and I still wasn't good enough. I pioneered, which means you're knocking on doors. I did it auxiliary pioneers, which means part-time, which was 60 hours a month. I did it in the snow. It was snowing and 20 degrees, and I'm knocking on doors, and people weren't answering their doors. I did everything I could to be a good little Jehovah's Witness, and I was never good enough. And I lived with that defeat for 20 years. I was unworthy. I was not good enough. I was not loved. Therefore, I had the anger and the depression and the just complete feelings of unworthiness, of extreme loneliness. And I made new friends. One of them is sitting here. She was a wonderful friend of mine. God brought a wonderful friend into my life. And I was just a wreck. I was a total wreck. And then one day in 2004, I put my former religion under a microscope. And all hell broke loose. Because I found things that made me realize my whole life was a lie. So one summer, what I did was I researched. I was self-employed working from home at the time, and I was such a wreck because I started to research my religion. Because, you see, here's the thing. At that time, my family had been shunning me for 15 years. And I said, what is going on with this crazy religion? How can the stronghold, how can they have such a stronghold on my family that my family, we were a New York family, we were a very close Italian New York family, right? We had my mother had a huge extended family. Even though we were Jehovah's Witnesses, we still had that close bond. But it was 15 years and they had shunned me, right? So I said, what is up with this religion? So I started to research it. And what happened was I was learning things right away. I mean, right away. And I'd be like, I don't believe that. So I had these notebooks, frenzy, writing, because the internet was fairly new back then. And I had all these pieces to the puzzle. oh my goodness, Russell and Rutherford and this NGO at the UN and the Malawi scandal and the subliminal images. And I read this book, 30 Years a Watchtower Slave. I read that before Ray Franz's book. And maybe had I flip-flopped them, Ray Franz's book would have had more of an impact on me. But William Schnell's book rocked my world. He told the story of how they used the mind control techniques in the 30s to control the witnesses, and it just was unbelievable. So I spent 3 months. I didn't work. I have a daughter. She was a teenager back then, and she was like, "Mom, I'm going to live with Dad for a month." I didn't eat. I slept at my desk. I had a bruise on my forehead. I was just beside myself because, like I said, I didn't know there was a Witnesses Now for Jesus thing going on, and then I didn't know any of that. I was alone, figuring this out on my own. And I was distraught. And I went to my friend's house one day, and I sat at her kitchen table, I'll never forget, and I put my face in my hands, and I sobbed loudly, saying, my whole life was a lie. It's so scary. This is scary. I was petrified. If your whole life you're told 2 plus 2 is 4, or let's just say 2 plus 2 is 5, and your whole life you learn mathematics, and then one day they're like, nope, you were deceived. Everything you were told was a lie. Frightening, very, very frightening. And one day I found myself at night in my bed, shaking, literally in fear. I had researched too much. I took it too far. All of these pieces to the puzzle, started to fit together. And I saw a picture of evil that scared me half to death. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I saw evil defined, and it had been my life. And I understood it because I was a Jehovah's Witness. And I connected the two. I connected that the God that I was serving was not the God of the Bible. He was Lucifer. And that I was an occultist, and that I was in a satanic cult. And I was so scared that I was shaking in my bed. But I sat bolt upright in bed, and I said, wait a minute. If I wasn't serving God, and I didn't turn my back on God, then who is God? So I cried out to a God I did not know. I got out of that bed. I liken it to like a cartoon, like Bugs Bunny, like when he's running and he goes on the cliff and his feet are spinning and he's not going anywhere. I was tangled in the covers and the sheet. I could not get out of that bed. And I flung those covers off. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and I ran through my house and out my French doors and out on my deck, and I fell flat on my face. And I cried out to a God I didn't know. And I don't know how long I was out there, but I know I was out of control, crying. This mild, timid, shy, tiny little person was like a bowl of Jell-O, a jiggly lump of nothing. I felt like that. I was on my face in front of a holy God, begging him to reveal to me who he was. And I don't know how long I was out there. Could have been 2 minutes, it could have been 5, it could have been 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden, I sat up and I wiped my face, and I got up and I calmly, you have to understand, my life was filled with fear. I, as every Jehovah's Witness knows, everything about my life was fearful. I was afraid of the day. I was afraid of the night. I was afraid to go to sleep. I was afraid to have a bad dream. I was afraid to close my eyes because I might see demons on the inside of my eyelids. That's the Jehovah's Witness life for you, okay? And so I calmly sat up. All fear was gone. I believe Ephesians 4:14 was fulfilled in me that day. Wherefore he says, awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. My fear was gone, and my fear is gone. I don't suffer from worry, anxiety, and fear. I'm relatively fearless. He took it away. He took away the anger, the fear, the animosity, and he replaced it with compassion and love. So I stand up, I walk in my house to the other side of my house, not knowing what I'm doing, okay? Not realizing what happened. I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on, right? And I get like this, this little kitchen ladder that, you have to reach, at least I have, to reach the high spots, right? And I dragged it through to the other side of the house, to the same bedroom I was in my closet. And I had like this closet organizer, and I climbed up there, not knowing what I'm doing, and I like was kind of feeling around, reaching. Oh my gosh, that's where I put it. And that was where I had placed a Bible like 15 years earlier. And I went in that same bed, and I opened up to page 1. And I read that Bible in the next 3 months, from beginning to end. And I cried and sobbed, gut-wrenching sobs, because I met that God I never knew. What we learned about God and what we learned about the Bible stories was only the bad things. What we learned about David, King David, was when he did the deal with Bathsheba, okay? And when he killed the husband, and then when Saul tried to pin him to the wall, and those were the things. We didn't learn about grace and love. And I remember reading in the Old Testament where, they put the sacrifice on the altar, and the fire fell from heaven and consumed the sacrifice, and I was like, wow, what a story. I never knew about this. And then I got to the New Testament and was reading the Gospels, and the 4 Gospels, and when Jesus was walking the earth, and Jesus' ministry was to the Jew first, so his ministry was under the law, and he would heal a person, and he would say, now, don't tell anybody, you need to go to the priest to be healed, because that's what the law told him to do. And I'd be like, why doesn't Jesus want people to know where he is, and why is he telling people to go? I didn't understand the 4 Gospels, okay? But it wasn't until I got to Paul's gospel. It wasn't until I learned that Jesus took my sin in his body. The weight of my sin he took on his body. And he died, and he was tortured, as you said, Martha. And guess what? He conquered death. He rose bodily. He conquered the devil. He was the first fruits, so that I could live. Amen. And I learned that there is absolutely nothing that I can do to enter the presence of a holy God. I spent my whole life striving to be that good girl, and none of it mattered. All the door knocking, none of it mattered. The pioneering, none of it mattered. He saved me. Let's see what else I have here. Okay, we'll just go through. Okay, so my prayers, in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and mind through Christ Jesus. I lived that. That was fulfilled in me, and it still is to this day. Let's see what I kind of forgot about my my PowerPoint here. So listen. I was called to missions in 2004, and I thought God was going to send me on the foreign mission field. I led I led mission trips all over the world and told my story there. And I, went through years where I cleaned my house and I got rid of all old stuff. And I downsized because I thought God was going to send me on the foreign mission field. Little did I know this Australian Royal Commission would happen and the Jehovah's Witness organization would be exposed for their crimes. And listen, friends, when I learned the evil of the evil organization I was a part of, I started praying fervently. My prayer was this: I would cry because I couldn't believe it. My family's still in this organization, and it's been more than 30 years since we've had any relationship, okay? So I would cry and say, Lord, when? What, when? Because I had such little faith. When are they going to be able to open their eyes? When are they going to be able to hear the truth? I never dreamed that their crimes would start being exposed and that people would be exiting by the thousands. They're coming out by the thousands. And the thing is, these are very brave people who have been victimized. And some of my viewers, my YouTube viewers from all over the world, they tell me, Elaine, 65 years I spent in that organization. I just had one guy tell me his brother needed a kidney dialysis and asked me to send him the Elder's Handbook because he wanted to know if he could get dialysis, and they didn't let him and he died. This just happened a couple of weeks ago. This is this organization that we were a part of, right? So listen, the mission field that God sent me on, he what was it that you said? I answered my own prayer. Do you remember? Okay. Anyway, this prayer of 15 years of Lord, when, who's going to reach the Jehovah's Witnesses? He gave me this YouTube ministry where I'm a Christian and I expose them for who they are. One of the things I do is I analyze the weekly study articles that they're studying, and I expose them, and I tell them the truth from the Bible. And people tell me, Elaine, my mother was watching Zoom, and I used your material on her. So people are hearing the truth of the gospel. And this is my mission field to the people that I love with all of my heart. Listen, I love you. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, don't give up. There's hope. Christ is greater. He's greater. Listen, I keep forgetting what's on this and what's on my one for tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, I'm going to get into more details, but I wrote this devotional, 30 Days of Truth That Will Renew Your Mind from a God Who is Love. Because, see, what we have to do, friends, is we have to replace the lies of Watchtower with the truth. The reason I carried around this indoctrination for 20 years was because I never replaced that worldview. I lost my worldview. I was not going to survive Armageddon. That was the worldview. What did I believe now? That's what we have to do, and why not replace it with the truth? So the sneak peek is that every day you'll get a truth, that you're loved. Were we ever told that we were loved by God? Were we ever told that we're joint heirs? Joint heirs, think about that. That's mind-boggling. We are seated in the heavenlies. Were we ever told that? So anyway, friends, that is my story, and that's my testimony, and it's such a joy to be here. And don't lose hope. There's PIMOs out there, P-I-M-O, physically in, mentally out. My heart goes out to you. They don't want to be a part of this organization, but they can't get out because they lose everything. They lose everything. So listen, friends, we're praying for you, and be strong. Christ is greater. Praise him. He died for us so that we may live. Thank you so much.